I realized that this is something that it's like any muscle that I've been practicing. And the practice was creating that space to really reflect and to notice and to explore what that feeling is. Because it's so easy for us in life to have these negative, uncomfortable feelings, but we just keep pushing on and we just kind of brush them off. One of the keys to, at first I would say, surviving this journey, but really thriving in this journey is having clear intention of what is it that I want to feel and to experience, but releasing the attachment to the exact how it has to happen, where it has to happen, when it has to happen. And one of the examples of this multiple times was I had mapped out a route to travel around the country, and it was really based on seasons and weather. So I didn't want to be stuck in Michigan during the winter and in Texas during the middle of the summer. But as I was mapping out this route, there were certain destinations that I had planned on my calendar, and I said I'm going to be here on this date. And as the time got closer, so for example, I was in let me think, where was I? I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was supposed to go to Washington D.C. And I told my friends, I said I'm going to show up in D.C. next week, and plans just started to fall apart. My friend I was going to stay with, some scheduling things happened, and people I was going to meet, and I, instead of trying to force it, because I had forced things a few times, and I can share those moments where things didn't work out. I started to reflect, is this the joyful path? Is this, because I said I was going to be there, does it mean I necessarily need to be there now? And I really thought for a while. It's like, no, this is not the joyful path. And I just happened to be on a call with a friend of mine who's in Miami, and she says, hey, why don't you come on down and hang out with us? And I thought, wow, from Charlotte to Miami, that's like 14-hour drive detour in the opposite direction. But I thought, you know what? Every time I spend time with my friend Annette and Eddie, I always brings me so much joy. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to bite the bullet and make that drive. So I drove all the way down, and Florida has got to be almost as long as driving across Texas here. But
Yeah.
I finally get down to Miami that night, and it was around 9:30, and we're having a late dinner together. And Annette, my friend Annette, says, so what do you want to do in Miami? And I said, quite honestly, Annette, I had no plans on going to Florida at all on my journey here. But while I'm here, I heard that there's great Cuban food and culture. And so maybe we could go out and eat and listen to some music. And she says, great, let's plan that. And so we were going to do that over the next course of the next few days. And so I'm sitting there in her office the next day, and we're just brainstorming some business, some marketing ideas. And she has a business where she creates travel itineraries for people to go to Italy, to France, to Cuba, to all these different places. And I was asking her, I said, do you create any video content to help your guests learn more about those destinations, get them excited and all that? And she's like, no. And so we started thinking, well, how do we create these videos? And her boyfriend, who was sitting next to us, his name is Eddie, he says, you want to go to Cuba this weekend? And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. And so she hops online, checks flights, checks things. Next thing you know, an hour later, we're going to Cuba. And this is a Wednesday. So by Saturday, we're on a plane to Havana. We get there, and because she's connected to all these travel organizations, we get the most incredible experience. We're staying at this private home, and we're in an RV going out to the countryside, and I'm documenting this whole journey, and it was amazing. And I get back and I think, wow, if I had stuck to my path of going to DC and forcing it, this whole opportunity would never have happened. And it's about staying connected and clear to the intention of connection and joy and fun. You talk about, freedom and allowing these opportunities to happen, and then appreciating those opportunities too. And so that's just an example of the magic that continues to happen on this journey that I could never have imagined sitting there in my apartment. Should I go on this? Should I do this or not?
Yeah. How much would you have lost
Mm.
if you would have stayed in your apartment, brother?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, you're saying, but I think it's immeasurable, right? I mean, how could you even measure what you had lost if you would have made a different decision 2 years ago? It's And for those of you that can't see him, he's just like staring at me because there's nothing to say. There's nothing you can say. Like, it would be like tremendous loss. And even thinking of it now you're focused even more on travel. Like, so
Mhm.
it's interesting that this is a friend that was in the travel industry and working on that and shooting video, and now you're putting even more of your life force towards this. So it's like even a double down. Not only did you follow the joy and enjoy, but that's kind of part of it. I think, feelings, I have to bring this up again. I know you and I probably talked about this before, Yasmin, but for
Mhm.
everyone to hear this, and people that have been listening to me for a while, they probably hear me say this a lot, but it's so true. Like, I ignored my feelings. Let's go back in time for you and I both. When we were workaholics, you didn't take time to smell the roses. You didn't take time to say, hey, how do I feel? That's why, like, then it would just come in loads. We just like feel like crap and we're like, oh, where'd this come from? But you know what? It was happening every day, every hour, because we were just overlooking it, because we're just barreling through life. And I think these are the indicators that are telling us we're on the right path. When our heart and our mind can align, then the outward reality can become what we want. And I think it's when we get too much in our head and we're so focused on our businesses or these things, we're sacrificing the feelings. Our heart are like screaming out and saying, no, there's something else, or we're not in alignment. And then it becomes harder and harder, and it doesn't feel as good. So that's feelings. It comes back to that when it's not feeling good, that's, I look at it now, it's a mechanism inside of my body, just like the feelings. If I put my hand towards a hot grill or like a fire, we hope that our hand pulls away, and usually it does without us even knowing, just pulls away. We can't even, it's a reflex.
Right.
And we have that same reflex for other things, like going the right direction, but they're a little bit more subtle, right? Like, oh, you could have decided to go to Washington, I think you said Washington, D.C., or, to go up there, and you could have forced that. And then how much longer would it have taken for you to learn this lesson, or to get deeper into travel, and what would have been lost? But you listened, you've learned this lesson. You're like, oh, this isn't working out that well. Why not go a different path? And physically, geographically, it was way off path, but on a spiritual sense, it was exactly on path.
Yeah, absolutely. And I realized that this is something that it's like any muscle that you have been practicing. And the practice was creating that space to really reflect and to notice and to explore what that feeling is. Because it's so easy for us in life to have these negative, uncomfortable feelings, but we just keep pushing on and we just kind of brush them off. And by creating that space in our life that I was doing before and continue to do, it then raises that level of awareness that then allows us to then make a more conscious decision.
Yeah, it's so huge. I mean, really, really big. And just, I try to make mechanisms so that we can create some processes for those that are listening. And
Mm.
one thing that I have to bring back up is that you created a practice that you went to the coast once a week. Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
you would take a day, and so even if it was a weekend day, or did you take like a
No,
weekday off from work, or
this
how
it
did you
was
do it?
it was always a Wednesday or Thursday, and it was intentional because I knew that if I were to go on the weekend, then it would just be just another weekend. But if I took a day in the middle of the week where I said I'm not working, it was a conscious decision to, and back then I called it practicing retirement, practicing what it was like to not sit there in a conference room, in a cubicle, or whatever in front of my computer like everybody else was, and say, you know what? I am going to choose today as a day for myself. And regardless of what I need to do, and sometimes I needed to shift things around, but it was always during the middle of the week because I knew if I practiced that, that mindset would set in terms of I am choosing freedom. I'm not abdicating into when, but I'm choosing it now. And I'll work on the weekends. That's fine. I'll work on the weekends and then think to my head, I'm actually getting ahead. Nobody's working today. And then I'm going to take the day off. So it was like a little mental game that I was playing with myself.
Right. But
And
then you started to slow down and
mhm,
find the space to reflect and big notice the feelings. And mine wasn't like exactly like yours. I mean, obviously none of our stories are exactly the same pretty much ever, but it was meditation. So mine started in micro moments of meditating for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then upwards to like 30 minutes a day once I got into this ritual. And that mindfulness started letting me take more breaks, take more holidays. It just started to spread out because you started to notice the power that giving myself that breath, that space to notice my feelings, then aligned myself more with my success that I have today, the freedom. And so I think it's beautiful. You created space for yourself on a weekly basis. And then that, I really think if you weren't doing that, we wouldn't even be talking right now. Like, so, I mean, it started there. So I think, would you agree that that was kind of the starting point of all this?
It really is. That's the pattern interrupt. That was the waking up moment, right? Is that space is so important.
Hey there, I want to give you something really big. It's called Clear Path to Customers. It's the way that we get the right language to get the right client. I like to call them your wow clients so that you can have more results, more revenue, more raving fans, and more referrals. And I want to give this to you absolutely free. And all you have to do is go to stevenapolitan.com to check it out, or you can look at the description here. We'll put the details there. As always, remember, choose gratitude and create freedom.